right? So our behavior is linked to the functioning of our brain. Without the brain, our ability to think and make sense and meaning of our environment is not possible. Structure of the brain, how it functions, and why we think the way we do, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So just imagine the brain is one of the most important, if not the most important part of your body. Because without the brain, you'll die. Of course, without the heart as well. However, without the brain, we cease to continue. So think of it as your CPU. Although you may have some power supply from your heart, however, the overall functioning depends on your brain. So without the brain, we would not function as humans. Okay, so that's the picture of your brain. So it would be good if we really have an actual view of the brain. But if you want, just visit the science laboratory or other museums that are showing you the different, the actual uh, picture, actual brain, right? So that's the brain. The first part we need to talk about is the cerebrum, and it dominates your brain. All of that thing, all of that spongy like structure para siyang coral reef. So that's your cerebrum. It's the main part of the brain in humans and other vertebrates. Functionally, it obtains information from your surroundings, your body, and then sends that information to a specific part of the cerebrum. The cerebrum interprets the knowledge and decides what must happen next. The cerebrum contains the cerebral cortex. So, cerebral cortex, yun yung tinasabi natin convoluted parts of your brain, yung mga lukot-lukot. Yan. So, that's the cerebral cortex. So, cerebrum in terms of human function, in terms of intelligence, this is the main part which is associated with intelligence. Different functions connected to almost every part of your body, especially your sensory aspect of our body, like hearing, sight, and all the like. So in terms of conscious and intellectual functioning of our body, and that's what you can think of the cerebrum, right? So that's your brain. Okay. um, this is not really the actual picture of the brain, but this is just for study purposes. So this part is being, of course, your brain is divided into two halves, and each you have the right and the left, and each of these half, though separated, they are being connected by bundles of neural fibers. Bundles meaning maraming mga neural fibers. Ang tawag natin dyan is corpus callosum. That's the bridge that connects the two halves of our brain. Okay? So the corpus callosum passes messages between the two halves so they can communicate with one another. So by now, you may already realize that perhaps this is the foundation why there is a theory known as the brain dominance theory, wherein the brain is divided into the right and the left brain, and each of the half have different functions peculiar to the other. Now, uh, so the corpus callosum bridges the right and the left halves of your brain. So let's take a look. Now we saw that the cerebrum is divided into two parts, and each part, the left and the right brain, is connected by the bundles of neural fibers known as the corpus callosum. Now here we can see the different parts and the different the different portions and regions of the cerebral cortex or the cerebrum. And each of these regions have their own function. So let's start with the frontal lobe, which is all about executive functions, thinking, planning, organizing, and problem solving, emotions and behavioral control, and personality. Motor cortex is for the movement, sensory cortex for the sensation. Parietal lobe is about the perception, making sense of the world, arithmetic, and spelling as well. Occipital lobe is for the vision. The temporal lobe is about the memory, understanding, and language. You may be wondering why or how the scientists came up with these parts, how come they have associated each of these functions to these different parts of the brain. Now, using the MRI or the scanning device, uh, the brain is being scanned, and each of these function when they are done by the human being, the MRI suggests that there are portions or regions of the brain that are being activated, right? So that's it through MRI, right? So the different lobes of the brain. So the frontal lobe is located at the front, that's why it's frontal lobe, and it is associated with reasoning, motor skills, higher level cognition, and expressive language. It is responsible for your personality traits. So this is what makes you unique. This is what makes you conscious. This is what makes you intelligent. Reasoning, frontal lobe. Parietal lobe, on the other hand, is associated with processing tactile sensory information such as pressure, touch, and pain. So more on the logistics part. The temporal lobe, one in each hemisphere, close to where your ears are, it primarily functions in auditory processing. However, it may also be involved in emotion, learning and pronunciation, learning a new language. Occipital lobe, on the other hand, is associated with interpreting visual stimuli and information. It's all about vision. It shows you the more detailed part, but you don't need to memorize everything. You may just read through just to in order to supplement what we have just discussed from the other slide, right? So you have the specific anyhow, this is just for you. This is just for supplementary purposes. What do we have here? It's like a creature from under the sea. No, this is just the neuron. So you may be wondering, how does the brain transmit and receive messages from and to the different parts of the body? It is through the neuron. This is a special type of cell which was designed and it is specialized in transmitting messages. Wherefore, this is like the messenger of our body, from the different parts of the body to the brain. So as you can see, uh, what you have in front of you are the different parts of the neuron. So you have the dendrite. Wait a minute. You have the dendrite, the nucleus. You also have the soma or the cell body, the myelin sheath, the axon terminal. Each of these has their own function, right? So the cell body, right? This contains the neuron. This contains the nucleus of the neuron. The dendrites are the segments of the neuron that receive stimulation in order for the cell to become active. They conduct electrical messages to the neuron cell body for the cell to function. So this is where the neuron receives messages from other cells or from the other neurons. How do they do it? Through electrochemical signals. We don't need to understand all of them because that's for the concern of science, but today we're just learning how intelligence works. So here, the neuron accepts messages from other cells or from the other neurons. Axons, on the other hand, they conduct electrical impulses away from the neuron cell body. Axons are also known as nerve fibers. The function of the axon is to transmit information to different neuron muscles and glands. So from here, to receive the message, it passes through the soma, and the axon is the one who scatters the messages all throughout the neuron. Right? So just imagine your body within your body are the different connected neurons from the top of your head down to the soles of your feet. So again, the functions of a neuron is transmit and receive messages from and to the different parts of the body to the brain. Well, here is an actual picture of how two neurons are being connected. So see, uh, ju- just imagine messages are taken by these dendrites coming from different cells and from the other neurons, and it passes through here, accelerated by the axon and insulated by the myelin sheath, and it is again passed to the different neurons. Pasa na naman siya. Oh. And after it is passed, the other neurons accept it from the dendrite, and so on and so forth to the other neurons until the message is delivered to the right receptor. Para lang Lala Move or parang Grab Express. Okay? So, kanya-kanyang pasa yan. Pero it happens so fast that you cannot notice how these little creatures work, little cells work. So, the synapse, here's the synapse. This, kung ito dendrite nagre-receive, ang synapse siya ang nagta-transfer. So, this is what happens in the just imagine this is the synapse of the other neuron. This is synapse of the other neuron. And this one here is the dendrite of the other neuron. So parang zoom lang natin siya. So ano bang nangyayari dyan? Okay. May tinatawag tayong mga neurotransmitters. Ito yung sinasabi natin kaninang biochemical, uh, electrochemical signals. They messages again from one neuron to the other is delivered through electrochemical signals. And these electrochemical signals are known as the neurotransmitter. These are released from the synaptic vesicles in synapses into to the synaptic cleft, where they are received by receptors on the target cells. Alright? Dopamine. Okay, here you go. These things that dopamine, epinephrine, serotonin, endorphins, these are just some of the examples of neurotransmitters that your neurons use in order to transmit and receive messages. Dopamine. Now, there are different neurotransmitters that are being transmitted depending on the need of the body. So the dopamine, it is the neurotransmitter that affects movement, attention, learning, reinforcement, and pleasure. Norepinephrine, on the other hand, is the neurotransmitter that may be responsible for eating, alertness, and wakefulness. Epinephrine is responsible for metabolism of glucose, energy release during exercise. Serotonin affects mood, sleep, appetite, impulsivity, and aggression. And endorphin, they provide relief from pain and feelings of pleasure and well-being. So the question is, sir, what neurotransmitter, uh, ano ang, paano man sabihin to? How does our body know what neurotransmitter is to be transmitted from one neuron to the other? Now, it depends again on the use. So if your body is transmitting messages if your brain transmits messages to a body that needs movement, then perhaps dopamine is being used. Okay? So it depends on the need. Now, yun po yung ating discussion about the brain. So here we go. Na natin the different theories of the brain. So no need to elaborate them because I already discussed them. So now again, you don't need to memorize all of the things that we have discussed about the brain. Just familiarize yourself because there will be, for example, questions in the exam that are situational that needs familiarization of those terms. Okay, so
and everything will be fine.